Greetings, booktubers, and welcome back to Grammaticus Books. Welcome to a Sunday Comics edition of Grammaticus Books, although it is not a hidden comic book gems Sunday Comics edition. Instead, today we're doing Thor Omnibus number 1 and Thor Omnibus number 2, which I just finished reading, which clocks in at 1,497 pages of Thor to be exact. But we're going to round it up to 1,500. It's good enough for government work, and we're just going to call it 1,500 pages of Thor. And they are fantastic, and I wanted to get it up here for Sunday Comics for you guys here on the channel. I know I'm looking a little rougher than usual today, and that's because it's been a very busy week. Unfortunately, it's going to continue to be busy all the way through Thursday of this coming week. And I'm sort of multitasking here this morning to try to get this done and up. And that's why I've got a little different appearance than my normal appearance here on the channel, a little rougher appearance. But Thor Omnibus number 1. What about it? Well, it is the origin story of Thor. It collects Journeys into Mystery number 83 through 120. And it is fantastic stuff. Starting in 1962, it starts with the origin of Thor. It's Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, although Stan Lee at this point is directing the plot, but he's not necessarily writing the scripts. You get a lot of different people writing the scripts at this point, like Don Heck, Joe Sinnott, are doing the inks. You don't have Vince Colletta doing the inks yet. And you get Larry Lieber writing a lot of the scripts. And I have to say, it's a fairly, what I would describe as a workmanlike product at this point in 1962. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are basically punching the clock. They're producing a work product that's aimed at 14-year-old boys. And that's what these stories are really geared at. You get a lot of Thor versus common criminals, or just slightly elevated above, humans elevated above a common criminal, such as Mr. Hyde and the Cobra. And you get a ton of Thor versus the communists, which was a little surprising to me. I mean, there's a lot of Thor versus the communists here in Omnibus number 1. But then when you consider it's 1962, you got the Red Menace going on, the Red Scare. It's really not that surprising after all. But the comic book here, Thor, it starts to develop. It starts to become that work of genius that you associate with Thor right around Journey into Mystery number 97. Because in Journey into Mystery number 97, that's when Tales of Asgard starts up. And Stan Lee takes over writing the scripts for Tales of Asgard. Tales of Asgard is a short adult story of like 3 or 4 pages that focuses on Thor in Asgard, usually with the companions 3, his 3 companions in Asgard, who are Fandral the Flashing, Volstagg the Voluminous, and Hogun the Grim, known as the Warriors 3. And the tales there in Tales of Asgard revolve around the Norse myths and the tales of the Norse from their mythology out of the Scandinavian era. And this is where you see that spark of genius really start to kick off. And it's with Journey into Mystery number 97. And things start to pick up, and you can see that at this point, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are starting to think of this as something more than just a workmanlike product, something more than just punching a clock, and they start to put their hearts and souls into the work, and it really takes off and becomes something special, starting in Journey into Mystery number 97. In Journey into Mystery number 98, Stan Lee takes over writing the scripts of the regular Thor comics as well. Larry Lieber steps out, and in Journey into Mystery number 101, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby take over completely. And by 106, issue number 106, you get the magical combination of Stan Lee on the scripts, Jack Kirby on the pencils, and Vince Colletta doing the inks. And from that point forward, you've got that trio that really turned this into just a work of brilliance and comic book excellence. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you guys some of the work here from in Omnibus number 1, and then we'll move on to Omnibus number 2. So here's the opening cover, the origin of Thor there, and you can see it's a little rough. It's a little basic. And here's Dr. Don Blake discovering the walking stick that converts him into Thor when he gets trapped in a cave on vacation in Europe. You get a lot of Don Blake having to smack his stick, his walking cane down at the last instant, try to figure out ways to get it to him in order to turn into Thor to defeat the villains, while he's trying to profess his love to his nurse, Jane Foster. Here's some more of the introduction artwork. You can see at this point, It is just a workmanlike product. But then, in Journey into Mystery number 97, you get Tales of Asgard, and suddenly things start to pick up. And you start to see a little glimmer of some artistic spark here with Jack Kirby, that you can see the basic outlines of something that's going to turn into or transcend your regular comic book. And then here in this Tales of Asgard, you can really see it coming on. I mean, now you've got Jack Kirby where you're like, wow, that is the Jack Kirby that I think of when I think of Thor and Jack Kirby. You've got Odin over here. He's got the trolls, and it's just that classic look to it. Let's see who's inking this. Does it tell me who's inking this? It does not, but that looks a lot like Vince Colletta at this point, with just some wonderful stuff. Here you got Odin, who's fighting some dragons, and it looks just wonderful. And then we move on here, and we've got the return of Zarko, the Tomorrow Man. He's a villain that kind of appears. He comes from the future and gives Thor a hard time. And he shows up here in Journey into Mystery number 101. And then here with Journey into Mystery number 104, suddenly you start to see that typical Jack Kirby posing with the hands stretched out. That's very typical Jack Kirby, with the fingers just displayed the way they are, and a nice flying pose by Jack Kirby. And we're starting to see that spark of genius kick off. And then here we've got Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Vince Colletta in Tales of Asgard for the first time. And you got that magic trio coming together. That's the very first time you see it, which is really great stuff. And let me figure out which issue that is again. That should be issue 106. Oh, it's Mr. Hyde. We're back to Mr. Hyde. He's the guy in the green there. And it is Journey into Mystery number 106. You see Thor and Mr. Hyde on the cover, who is a character who reappears over and over here in Omnibus number 1. And then at the end, you get a little treat here. You get Thor versus the Hulk. So you get treated to Jack Kirby drawing a nice little battle between him and Thor. Jack Kirby, the creator of the Hulk, and there you get just the classic Jack Kirby Hulk along with the Thor. And it's great stuff. There on the back, you can see all the covers to all the issues that are contained in Omnibus number 1. And the quality of these omnibuses is excellent. The paper quality is just top-notch. The binding is solid. The coloring and the printing on it is fantastic. They're really well made. But then that brings us to Thor Omnibus number 2, and this is where the magic really comes together. This is where things just really start to gel. The plots take off. Stan Lee starts writing about more worthy heroes for Thor to battle. You get Pluto from the underworld of Mount Olympus. You get a lot of Thor versus Hercules. Zeus steps in. You've got Ego, the living planet, and the artwork just starts to become phenomenal. Here we are right here on the Mighty Thor issue number 122. The issuing on this, when they switch over from Journey to Mystery into Thor, they just keep the numbers the same. They just change the title. So this is the Mighty Thor number 122. And now you get these covers that are just some of the best comic book covers ever created by Jack Kirby here in Omnibus number 2. And they're fantastic. Oh, here we get one, Mighty Thor, and you see Hercules while he battles this human that's been converted over by a shard of a magical gem that he picks up. It's kind of boring, frankly, and he's a communist. So you have some communists who do return here in Omnibus number 2, but it's short-lived. And then you get that classic Jack Kirby cover with Thor and Hercules, where he's got all these battles with Hercules. And we've pretty much dispensed with the common criminals. In Omnibus number 1, there was actually a title that was called Thor, Prisoner of the Reds with the Communists, and then another one where it was Thor and the Thug. So you had Thor versus a common street thug, and those days are gone. Here's the introduction of the Odin sword, which of course can introduce Ragnarok, which becomes a big recurring theme within the Thor comic books. And again, we've got another just epic comic book cover by Jack Kirby. with Zeus, Hercules, and Thor. With Thor doing more battles with a nice little splash page there with Vince Colletta and Jack Kirby doing the artwork for a full-page Thor. Flying down the land in New York City, as he frequently does. And then Thor versus Ego, the Living Planet. This is one of my favorite issues within the whole omnibuses, number 1 and 2. I think this is where Jack Kirby really hits his stride. So you got Thor in the Recorder. He's just come from the colonizers in space, and they're into the Black Galaxy, where they land on Ego, the Living Planet. And at this point, the art just becomes magical. Jack Kirby has absolutely hit his stride, and it's just a work of just absolute brilliant genius. Just beautiful stuff. It sort of transcends being a common comic book and becomes something beyond common comic books. And that's what makes this issue, Omnibus number 2, so desirable, is Jack Kirby's just spectacular work in here. Just fantastic stuff. Really like that issue a lot. We get a guest appearance of Galactus in here. Unfortunately, it would have been great to have Thor versus Galactus, but that's all you get of him right there. And then, of course, the Thor versus the Destroyer. You have the Destroyer introduced, which becomes one of his deadliest foes. Fantastic work over here with Asgard. Odin and Asgard, I should say. And then you get introduced one of my favorite Thor villains of all time. Here in Thor issue number 137 is Ulik the Troll. I really like Ulik. I think he's a great villain. John Buscema does a great job with him as well. I think that's Roy Thomas and John Buscema who write some great Ulik the Troll issues later on. And then also here in number, was it 137, you have the start of a long-running tale, a long-running story in Tales of Asgard called The Tragedy of Hogun. That's a really good run on the Tales of Asgard. I like that a lot, which is sort of the origin story of Hogun the Grim, and he has to go back and free his homeland from the grips of Mogul the Wizard. Great cover, classic cover, just epic cover by Jack Kirby, which is Thor number 139, To Die Like a God. Thor and Sif on there. And then by the end of it, you've got Jack Kirby, who just, it doesn't matter what he's drawing, it just looks fantastic. You've got two faces, Balder and Sif, who are drowning in a bog of quicksand, and it looks wonderful. You've got Don Blake that's peering into a microscope over here on the other page, and he makes that look epic and fantastic because he's just such a fantastic artist. And of course, hurtling through the cosmos in his typical fashion there, and it's just wonderful, wonderful stuff. And that's what makes this second omnibus so desirable and so hard to get. The first omnibus you can pick up for about $50 to $60 on eBay, no problems. The second one, when I was looking to get this, just your entry level, your basement level price was going to be about $250. Now, I did see one yesterday, I looked it up. There was one of these being sold for about $160 on eBay, which is the cheapest that I've ever seen one of these up in at least the last couple of years. So that would be a really great price. Unfortunately, this one is a lot harder to get because it's got a lot of the great comic book art in it. So if you get these, how do you read them? Because these things weigh like 8 pounds. They're massive. Holding them up gets to be a pain in the butt. You've got these slip covers, these dust jackets that slide around them all the time. So I will show you how I read them. And it's a pretty good way. It's a good solution. You can go out onto Amazon and you just get yourself a little book stand, a little book holder. And you can pick these up for about like 20 bucks on Amazon. They make all different types of them. And I put a cloth in the middle of it to protect the book. And then you just set your omnibus in there. And I put it on my kitchen table. And in the morning I go out and I can read a few pages. In the evening I come back and I can read a few more pages. And it just rests right in there just like that. And it's perfect. You don't have to hold it up. It's just right there in the book holder. You come over here, you read a page and you flip it. And it's no problem. It makes it easy peasy. It's really a great solution to how to read these omnibuses. And I highly recommend it. And that is Thor's Omnibus number 1 and 2. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that as much as I did reading it. If you get a chance to pick these up, I highly recommend them. especially Thor Omnibus #2. That is where the magic really happens. Oh, that one is harder to get a hold of. But I need to get my day going, so I'm going to wrap this up and say take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.